Today we're evaluating an interesting crap strategy. It's called the 3-1-1-3, and that's because it really only loses on an easy 4. I programmed 100,000 bots to play the strategy, and we're going to find out how much they won and lost, what their bankroll was, and a whole lot more. If you find this interesting, please click the like and subscribe button. It really helps my channel with the algorithm. The 3-1-1-3 was submitted as a custom analysis by Thomas H. The casinos have tested their strategy over millions of rolls, and now you can too. My custom craps analysis service offers detailed insights for any crap strategy. Visit dicedata.info/services for pricing and availability. Thomas said that this strategy is based on a HolyRollr video called John 1010. I'm going to link to that video in the description below. Before we get into the actual data in the report, let's just take a moment to see how the 3-1-1-3 actually works. The 3-1-1-3 has the exact same bets on every single roll. There's a $230 lay bet against the 4, $30 on the hard 4, $15 on the 5, $30 each on the 6 and 8, and $15 on the field. The 12 on the field does pay double, even though the felt says that it pays triple. I just forgot to change out the felt when I made the animation. Now that the bets are set up, let me first draw your attention to the win condition table on the bottom right. This table tells you the net win on every single roll. And notice that there are only two totals that actually lose money, the 4 and the 7. The 4 is going to lose $245 if it's an easy 4, and it's only going to lose $5 if it's a hard 4 because we have that $30 bet that's covering it. So let's throw a couple dice and see what happens. Our bets are always working on the strategy, so the 7 on the come out is going to lose most of the bets but win $109 on that lay bet. Field wins on the 12, going to win double, even though that felt says pays triple. And the field wins again with snake eyes. All right, we got a point of 8. We lose the field, but win $35 on the 8. There's a quick 7 out. That's going to be a net loss of $11. Notice, though, that the bot is up $58 for this shooter. So I think that gives you a good sense of how the strategy works. Again, it's the same bets on every single roll. Everything's working. So let's jump into the simulation report and see how we did over 100,000 bots. So here's the simulation report for the 3-1-1-3. And we're going to start off in the beginning, and let's look at the simulation run so we can get a sense of what our data looks like. We had 100,000 bots playing the strategy. They played over 10 hands, which means we got 1 million hands total and over 8.5 million throws of the dice. We'll first look at the data from the house's perspective. The bots bet a total of $874 million, with $371 million won and just under $400 million lost. That's an overall house take of $26 million and a blended house edge of 3.03%. That is a moderate house edge. It's a little higher than some of the best bets that you can make on the craps table, but it's definitely lower than some of the worst bets. We're going to get into some of the details about why the house edge is at a 3.03 later when we look at the bet detail. So that was how the house did, but now let's see how the bots did during their sessions. 33.3% of the bots won money during their session of 10 shooters, and 66% lost money. So that ends up being a 2-to-1 disadvantage. Now let's see how much they actually won and lost during this session. The median was a loss of $223. On average, the bots lost $265. The middle 50% is between a loss of 606 and a win of 120, and the middle 90% is between a loss of 1,234, interesting number there, and a win of $566. And you can see the minimum and maximums here. So there is a longer tail over towards losses than there is towards the wins. This is the histogram. So on the x-axis, we have the amount won and lost, and on the y-axis, we have the percentage of bots, and you can see that peaks at about 15% just below 0. Now, the thing about this strategy is it does have a higher downside, so the losses are going to outweigh the wins. And you can really see this in this chart. Look at the average loss when there is a loss. It's $552. But the average win when there's a win is only $310. So there's a little bit of an imbalance there, where when you lose more than you win when you win. Now, what we were just looking at was the bot outcomes for 100,000 sessions of 10 hands, but we can also look at the hands individually. Now we can see out of 1 million hands, 63% of the bots actually won money and only 36.9% lost money. But the thing is, most of those wins are just a small amount of money. So the median is just $17. If you look at this here, these bins are $100 wide. So between $0 and $100, so 46.8% of the bots landed in this bin between $0 and $100 won. And again, you can see here that the tail on the loss side is longer than the tail on the win side. Even on the hand level, we have pretty high downsides. Look at the average loss given a loss is almost $200. But when you're winning on average only $73. That's even a little more stark when it comes to the medians. So the median win given a win is only $51. Whereas the median loss given a loss is all the way up at $180, so substantially more than the wins when you win. Now let's see what bankroll the bots needed to be able to play these strategies. There were a handful of bots that never needed more than that initial $350 outlay when they first walked up to the table. The median outlay was $783, average $868. Getting up into the 95th percentile is almost $1,700. So the way that you would interpret that is that you would say that 95% of the bots never needed more than $1,699 to be able to play this strategy over 10 shooters. On a hand basis, 67.4% of the bots never needed more than $350 out of their own pocket. The return on outlay chart shows how often the bots were able to double and triple their money. 9.4% doubled, almost 2% tripled. Very few were able to win 4 times their money, and pretty much nobody was able to do 5x and 10x in this strategy. And that happens a lot with hedging strategies. It's really hard to win a lot. It's kind of the same theme we're seeing over and over again, where when you win, you're going to win smaller amounts, but when you lose, you could lose quite a bit. The betting power is also interesting. For every $100 that the bots bought in for, there were $1,000 in total bets, which of course is outstanding. And that, again, is because of the hedging strategy. So much of that money is going to be recycled over and over again. So the estimated comp return was 8.2% on their outlay. And I'll just really quickly kind of go into how this is calculated. Rated action, $8,570 for a median. Now that's pretty high because, again, a lot of the bets are being recycled because of that hedging strategy. The session theoretical loss is $260. That's really based on the house edge. If we assume that the bots are playing for 4 hours at 80 throws per hour, then that's about $1,000, and 25% of that is about $251 returned in comps. Another interesting thing about the 3113 is it doesn't have a particular affinity for any table condition, whether it's hot, cold, or choppy. If you notice here, it's very similar win rates across all different table conditions, and even very similar profit and loss across those table conditions. Now, I think the spread is a little bit different on the cold tables, but in general, there really isn't a clear trend. And you can really see this in this chart, which shows the average rolls between sevens on the x-axis and the amount that was won and lost on the y-axis. And notice that it's just kind of a big blob, right? It doesn't have any upward trend or downward trends. The playing experiences also shows some interesting numbers. This strategy has at least one bet that wins on every single roll. So our hit frequency is 100%. Every single roll has at least one bet that wins. And when it comes to volatility, this is going to give you a pretty smooth ride. Remember, there's a lot of hedging. Most of the rolls aren't going to win or lose a whole lot of money. So overall, this gets a smooth 5-star rating. Now I have some information about the length of the sessions and the length of the hands. I'm not going to go into a lot of information in this video, but if you are interested in this, I did a separate simulation. I simulated 10 million hands and I wrote up a report called The Shooter's Edge, and you can download it for free. Just go to dicedata.info/guide. Now, I mentioned earlier we were going to look at the bet detail, and this section shows all of the different bets that are being placed and how many of them were actually resolved, how often they won, how often they lost, and what the overall house edge is. Notice that the hard four is the most expensive in terms of house edge at 10.8%. The field is 5.6%. That's because it pays double on the 12, whereas if it paid triple, it would be down about half of that. And the next highest is the place 5, which is coming in at about 4%. These charts show how much each of the bets actually contributed to the wins and losses. The biggest is going to be the lay 4, right? 42% of the wins, 41% of the losses. And that's really because it's such a higher dollar amount that it's accounting for most of the wins and most of the losses. And of course, that's where, when you really lose money, that's where you're going to lose money in this strategy. Also notice the field comes in second at 17% of the wins, 18% of the losses. And that's because the field is a single roll bet. So it's turning over a lot more quickly than all of the other bets, which are all multi-roll bets. The last thing I want to show you today is the throws to profit. The x-axis is the throw number, and the y-axis is the percentage of bots that are in profit by that throw. So what this is basically saying is how long is it going to be until you get out of the hand. Now notice that this strategy never quite makes it there. So it has an interesting shape and it has a couple of these waves. So it seems like it does kind of increase after a while, but it never even quite gets to the 50% mark. And it certainly never gets close to the 90% mark that we have here. So what this is basically telling us is that this strategy isn't going to overperform when you have a hot shooter. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you found this interesting. If you are interested in reading the entire simulation report, it is available to my Think Tank subscribers. Just go to thinktank.dicedata.info. You could subscribe there and get full access to this report. And as always, thank you very much for watching.